You are about to listen to a free portion of The Young Turks. To podcast the complete show, sign up for membership at tytnetwork.com/membership.
All right, welcome to The Young Turks. Cenk and Iadarola with you. It's a big for the Wednesday show. Okay. Today's a rare night where we don't have a debate or an election in this primary season. We do have one tomorrow night. We will be going live on the air at 8:45 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, as well as our regular show, of course, as always. That's at tytnetwork.com/live. That's a Democratic debate, so will Hillary Clinton be even more aggressive towards Bernie Sanders, or will she be more conciliatory now that she believes his ideas at least have won, right?
I guess you could go either way.
It could go either way. There's no way to find out unless you're here at tytnetwork.com/live.
You should be ready to duck that kitchen sink.
Okay. Right. And then on Saturday, the Republicans brawl again. As you're about to see in our show, Chris Christie was going to get eliminated from that debate. He wasn't even able. He was not going to be allowed on the stage, so he appears to have quit today. But we're really winnowing down now among the Republicans.
Lost two, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you about who dropped out today, obviously.
But you don't want to miss Saturday. It's going to be an exciting debate. It's going to be the worst day of my life because Trump is going to be talking about how he won every answer. It's exciting and sad.
Come watch John suffer. Saturday at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at tytnetwork.com/live. All right, you got that. And then later in this program, unfortunately, another day, another outrageous story of a person being shot by cops. This time it's an unarmed black teenager. He was so unarmed, he was naked. They shot him anyway. So it's just the outrage never ends, man. We didn't make them do this. They're doing it. They're the ones choosing to shoot naked people because they're so worried about their lives. So we'll get into that in the second hour, but we got a lot of politics for you in the first hour here. So Johnny Pie, let's get started.
Okay, let's figure out exactly what happened last night. The final results from New Hampshire are in, and we have the numbers for you. We have the numbers, and we have an explanation for how a number can be much larger than a number and still be somehow smaller in the end. So we're going to get to that shortly. But first, the final Republican numbers. Let's bring up this graphic. You're going to see the breakdown. Trump with just over 100,000 votes. I'm sure he'll reference that. 35%. So it kept going between 34 and 35 throughout the night. He ended up with the 35. Kasich doing admirably, almost half as many total votes, almost, with 16% there. And you're seeing that although it looks like a big difference between Kasich, Cruz, Bush, and Rubio, the actual delegate change up until you get to Rubio doesn't really matter that much. And Rubio getting hosed there, only 1,000 less votes than Bush, 0 delegates to Bush's 2.
Yeah, that didn't work out well for him.
No.
So now when you look at this board, there are a couple of things that stand out at you.
Trump did win.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. The one is how everybody's celebrating Kasich's kind of victory today when he got destroyed by Trump. He lost by 19 points. Trump had more delegates than all the rest of them combined. So 19-point win is pretty large.
Yeah, but John Kasich now has Joe Mentum.
So I get it. Kasich's thrilled to have finished above Jeb Bush, who had so much more money, Marco Rubio, who so much of the establishment donors love.
Yeah.
But overall, still not a great day for any of them not named Trump.
Yeah. No, it's not. Now let's jump over to the Democratic side. The final number is there. You're seeing Sanders with 60% to the 38% for Clinton. So that's 21, 22 points higher than predicted by most people. 151,000 votes, so 50% more votes total than Trump, with Clinton, who came in second and kind of a distant second, almost getting as many votes as Trump in New Hampshire. And of course, New Hampshire, a more liberal state, or a more Democratic state anyway. But the interesting number that comes out of that is that 60 to 38 still results in 15 to 15 delegates, which is interesting, and we'll return to that shortly. But there's one other thing we have to talk about first. If we can bring up graphic 3, you're going to see a breakdown of the polling averages for Iowa and New Hampshire, the results for Iowa and New Hampshire per candidate, and the results versus polling. Don't worry too much about the first two columns. The third is how much better or worse each candidate did than the average polling there. And you're seeing that Rubio is actually the king there in Iowa, doing 6.2 points better, although he drops down to negative 3.4 in New Hampshire. But so that doesn't really say that much. But for Sanders, he was at 5.7% more in Iowa, 5.5% more in New Hampshire, starting to establish a trend there. So when you see that he's down by a lot versus Clinton, you might be able to reasonably say, well, it's probably about 5.5 points less than it seems. With Clinton underperforming, by the way, it's very slightly.
So as you looked at the Republicans there, almost all of them that did well in Iowa did poorly in New Hampshire. So as John pointed out with Rubio, it applies to Trump and to others. There's no discernible pattern there. Whereas on the Democratic side, there's a very clear pattern. Now, it's only 2 states, so let's not overanalyze.
It's the minimum to establish a pattern.
That's right. But Bernie Sanders outperforming what was expected results, the polling in both Iowa and New Hampshire, obviously, because of that, Hillary Clinton underperforming in both of those. So that goes to the idea that Bernie Sanders' momentum might actually lead to more people going out to vote.
Yeah.
So far in the first 2 states, it definitively has.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I mean, we could break down all the different demographics. We alluded to them yesterday, but that he basically destroyed in every category not white and rich. Mm-hmm. And I believe he still won by 7 points in that category even. But he destroyed in all the others. And look, anything can happen in these next elections. But I've been reading a lot of editorials, which I shouldn't because it makes me not able to sleep happily anyway. And they're talking about electability, and they're talking about what's going to happen in these other states. And he does way better amongst independents, way better amongst young people, significantly better amongst women, like better amongst conservatives and independents. And he's the liberal one.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you want to talk about a wave in the general election, that's how you generate it, is with those groups. And he's the one that draws those people in.
So 2 points about that. Now, almost all the Republican candidates are talking about what if they had to go up against Bernie Sanders. So that's an interesting change in dialogue there. They're beginning to view him as the threat that the polling indicates. And number 2, Trump activists on the day of the voting in New Hampshire were trying to convince independents to not go to the Democratic side and vote for Bernie Sanders, but to come to the Republican side and vote for Donald Trump. So they didn't try to do that with Hillary Clinton supporters because there aren't that many independents who are Hillary Clinton supporters. So that is an indication on the ground when they need the votes, the Republicans believed that Bernie Sanders has almost all of them on the independent side. That is a central thesis in electability.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thesis that Sanders would lay out there is, I am clearly more electable based on polling, one-on-one matchups, indisputable in almost all the swing states, right? And the fact that the other side believes I have all the independents, as well as the polling showing that very, very clearly. You know what that means? That means I'm more electable.
Exactly.
No ands, ifs, or buts about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people genuinely, enthusiastically excited about him. So let's return to the 15-15 and the tactic that I saw coming out of Bernie Sanders' win. So we had some of the obvious ones. Oh, he was always going to win. He's from Vermont. Well, always, he was down by like 50 points last year. So always, maybe not. Maybe he had to gain 70 points in the interim. But I guess if you gain 70 points, you're probably going to win. So that they're certainly saying that. He's never going to win South Carolina and Nevada, which they might end up being accurate on. But the other one that I saw, and it was some of the journalists that I respect, but I also know them to be Hillary Clinton supporters, started retweeting all of this stuff about superdelegates. And very enthusiastically pointing out that, well, while he has 50-odd delegates after the 2 races, 40 to 50, she already has 400 and something. As if to imply that she has won far more delegates, as if she's won far more elections when she hasn't yet really won even one election. And that's because of the superdelegates. And the superdelegates, I just did a full final judgment about what is a superdelegate, how did it start, why was it established. But that is why he can win by 22 points in New Hampshire. And they put on the graphic 15-15 as if what they earned was the same. Every news outlet that puts those numbers is lying to its audience because it implies that superdelegates are the same as delegates. It implies that they are a democratic outcome of an election as opposed to an anti-democratic attempt to subvert elections. And it implies that she has those votes. Yeah. They're currently endorsing her. They were endorsing her heavily against Barack Obama, and they changed in the end because the people chose Barack Obama.
So let me explain a couple of things here. Number one, those superdelegate votes will not stand, period. Okay, now, Secondly, it is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of weakness in this particular election to say all the politicians support me. Congratulations. People despise that. That's why you lost 70 points in New Hampshire. And the same people telling us now that Bernie's victory was inevitable was telling us that it was impossible before.
Exactly.
How many times have I told you this about different topics, whether it's Wolfpack or anything else? First they tell you it's impossible, then after you win they tell you it was inevitable, right? So, and now, right now, they say, oh, it's okay, he won in New Hampshire, but for him to win nationally is impossible. Later they will tell us it was inevitable, right? Yeah. So these are the same knuckleheads that drive John crazy when he reads those editorials and those columns, etc. So the mainstream pundits. Okay. Now, more importantly, the superdelegate issue. As Ben Mankiewicz said in our live coverage last night of the election, it's funny here that the Democrats are far more elitist than the Republicans in terms of how they do delegates. They have these superdelegates that say, tisk, people, we're not going to just rely solely on you. We're going to stack the system in favor of the establishment. The establishment loves Hillary Clinton, and we will tip the scales. And my answer to that is no, you won't. Because if it turns out Bernie Sanders wins more votes through this primary and caucus system, and then the superdelegates go, nah, we're going to throw it to Hillary anyway, the political revolution will no longer be just political. So don't fuck around with that. And I'm not saying that as a threat or anything like that. We're on the side of being liberals, and we're peaceful, and we believe in, if anything, civil disobedience. But if you rip away democracy and on the Democratic side and go, nah, we don't really care how you voted, the smart people in Washington have decided that we like Hillary Clinton better, you are going to have massive trouble on your head, okay? You thought the conventions sometimes in the 1960s, the Democratic conventions were ugly. Wait till you get a load of this convention. This convention will be a mess. It'll be a catastrophe if the superdelegates say, oh, yeah, democracy. We don't care about that. No. You can take your burn and take it elsewhere. We're going to pick the slimy politician that you rejected because we're also slimy politicians. It would be a mess beyond description. And so don't mess around with that. It's going to get ugly. I'm not telling you that as, I'm basically telling you that as a warning. It's a prediction, right? It's a prediction. So don't do it, because that's exactly what will happen.
It's like I was saying in the final judgment, it is for emergencies, in case of burning, break glass for superdelegates. And it's just 15% less democracy. And some of the people who were enthusiastically tweeting out that she had the advantage there, people who I'm sure if you ask them, hey, would you like more inclusion, more people to vote, make it easier to vote, get more people involved in the system, make sure that they have a voice, they'd say, yeah, I love all of that stuff. Oh, should she be protected by the superdelegates? Let's do it. Yes, sign me up. I want to take away the people's ability to decide for themselves. But really fast, I do want to break down some of these numbers just because I found them to be interesting, including one number in particular. So she already has over half. Right now, her campaign has mounted an aggressive effort to secure about 360 superdelegates across the country. Sanders has a total of 8 at this point, although that's not even as impressive as it sounds in just a second.
So can I just say, she made the same mistake last time around, 2008, collected all these superdelegates, which was a giant waste of time and money. Because at the end, when Obama won the vote, the superdelegates went to Obama because they would have had, again, a bloody mess on their hands if they had said, no, we're superseding the wishes of the people, right?
Exactly.
So this is a giant waste of time. Your superdelegates don't amount to dick, okay? So go keep wasting more time collecting politicians and putting them up on your mantle. All it does is hurt you, not help you.
Exactly, yeah. And by the way, you should watch the breakdown in the final judgment for the full history of all this. But just in case, they are members of Congress, the House, the Senate, former mayors and DNC party officials, and Bill Clinton is one of them. That's who these people are. So in the breakdown, in Congress, she has 39 of 47 senators with 7 uncommitted. Bernie Sanders has 1. That's Senator Bernie Sanders. That's one of his 8, by the way. It's him. Which, by the way, I think he should make a political statement by refusing to endorse himself. Refuse to exercise his ability. So in the House, she's up 157 to 2, and in the DNC, it's 138 to 10. Wow, he's actually doing better in the DNC than in the House. That's amazing.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why. Because the DNC has younger members. So that's why he'll get 10
I guess that's
votes
true.
in the
It's
DNC.
technically impossible for them to have him.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of guys, obviously, 2 guys in the Progressive Caucus who are backing Bernie Sanders in the House. Otherwise, they're also mostly rich millionaires who are part of the establishment and owe the Clinton family.
Yeah. And let's keep it real. When they gave that endorsement, they thought that his chances of winning were just about 0. And so there's no point in endorsing Bernie Sanders if he has no chance of winning. Why not give that to Hillary and get some sort of favor in the future? Not that she could ever be bought, but that's why you do these endorsements. But now, when he's doing much better, by the way, it also includes people like Bill Clinton, Howard Dean, Dick Gephardt, Walter Mondale. She's 8-1 in that group, and overall she has 355-14 with 341 uncommitted there.
So,
and again, these are based on like comments that people have made, statements. These are not votes that have been cast. They will not be cast for many months at this point.
okay, 2 final takeaways from this. It turns out Walter Mondale's still alive. Good for Walter Mondale.
I didn't know that either,
Okay.
actually.
And finally, what was the real delegate count in New Hampshire on the Democratic side? It was 15-9 based on the voting. Bernie Sanders with a 22-point win in terms of percentages. So he got 15 delegates for that. That's what it looks like will be the final tally. And Hillary Clinton got 9. The other 6 that Hillary Clinton has are superdelegates. There are 2 other superdelegates that are yet undecided. They say they'll decide closer to the convention. No, you won't. You'll decide. I mean, you decide. You can claim that you're going to decide later, but here's your decision. Bernie Sanders, the dude won by 22 points in your state.
Yeah.
You don't get to make a different decision than that if you're representing your state.
Which, by the way, means that these are the 2 more ethical of the people.
Yeah,
Because they're actually potentially going to go by based on what their people actually want.
But even so, they say, I'm still undecided. That's
true.
What percentage of the vote could Bernie Sanders have won to make you have decided today? What if he won by 42 points? What if he won by 92 points? Would you still be undecided? And the answer is actually yes, because you're a politician and you're trying to figure out what's more to your advantage. Well, good luck with that, because the people that are voting have no fucking interest in that. And again, if you try to enforce any of that bullshit, you will have a real revolution on your hands.
Yeah. Bear in mind I said more ethical, not ethical.
Yes.
And the final thing that I want to say is, the media is a bunch of just goddamn liars. Putting 15 and 15 is mind-bogglingly inaccurate. It's purposefully fooling people into thinking that the results of the election were roughly the same. At most, put an asterisk, or at least I should say, put an asterisk, like what they do with home runs. Or potentially maybe do 15-9 plus 6 superdelegates, so that at least people will do some research. Just writing the 15 and 15 is just trying to deceive people. The same as when they enthusiastically say that Hillary Clinton has the endorsements of Planned Parenthood and these other organizations. She technically does. The endorsements of those organizations' board of executives. That's what you should be telling people. It was not the group that chose. It was a couple of the leaders who chose.
Okay.
Hiding that information says that you're scared of that information.
Okay, look, if I'm Bernie Sanders supporters, I ask every one of those groups, especially the unions, but also Planned Parenthood and all those groups, I'd like a recount. Okay, I'd like a count where I actually count. So poll your members. Don't give me this bullshit about a bunch of people in Washington who get paid by the Clintons decided to support Clinton, and hence she has the better record. No, she doesn't. That's what the endorsement seems to imply, that she has the better record on those issues.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She has the better record of greasing the executives on those boards.
Yeah.
So let's just keep it real on that. So if their actual members didn't vote, it doesn't mean shit. It's total and utter crap.
Yeah.
Okay? So don't believe any of those groups claiming they're endorsing Hillary Clinton. I know. They funnel more money towards you. By the way, you think those groups in Washington run on hugs and kisses? No, they run on money. And the Clintons have a money machine in Washington. Bernie Sanders does not. So understand how this process works.
Yeah, we already know what would happen. Amongst the union organizations that actually do an open vote of all their membership, they have supported Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And by the way, and on the popular vote, one final point. So he obviously won the popular vote in New Hampshire. Who won the popular vote in Iowa? We will never know because they refused to release that information.
Okay, so let me
Suspiciously.
By the way,
0.2.
we think Hillary Clinton won by 0.2% in Iowa, and that's a we think because we don't really have the access to the numbers. and that's declared a Hillary Clinton victory. Now, they say narrow victory, to be fair, right? On the other hand, Bernie Sanders wins by 22 points in New Hampshire, and that's a tie because of the delegate count of 15 to 15.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. No, they're probably just playing it right down the middle.
Yeah, right down the middle. Virtual tie, we'll call it.
Virtual.
Yeah. Sends a shiver up my leg. Okay. Chris Christie's speech last night, after coming in 6th in the Republican primary in New Hampshire, was the speech of a guy who sounded like he was about to drop out of that race any minute. Now, as of today, as of us filming this, he has not technically suspended his campaign nor dropped out, although more and more anonymous sources in his campaign have been indicating all morning that he will, implying that he had a meeting with his leadership. They decided that he would drop out, especially because, as I'm going to get to, he's not in the next debate. And at least MSNBC has been contacted by a member of his organization that says that while it hasn't been announced, it is happening. So it's happened. It's happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. Down goes Christie. Down goes Christie.
Yeah. Poor Christie.
Yeah, well, the bigger they are.
You're the worst. Jimmy Dore, everybody. No. Yeah. So, again, not technically, but he's out. He's gone. He's not sticking around.
So
and
here's what doesn't happen in politics. All your handlers leak to the press that you're going to drop out, and you come back and go, I didn't mean it. I mean, maybe I'm back in.
Yeah.
That's horribly weak and not what Chris Christie would do.
Unless you're Ross Perot.
Right.
Or if it turns out that this was all just Ted Cruz telling the media he was dropping out. You never know with Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, he's gone. He's a goner.
Yeah. We have the source in his campaign that says, we bet the ranch on New Hampshire and no one ever anticipated the Trump phenomenon. He's a realist. Speaking not about Trump there, but about Chris Christie. And
speaking about,
that's accurate.
Yeah, and speaking about a proverbial ranch, not ranch dressing.
Jesus Christ. And look, there was some chance that were he to be able to be in this weekend's debate, that maybe he would stay in, either to improve his chances in the next caucus or possibly just to torpedo another person's campaign like he did with Marco Rubio. But since he finished in 6th, he was not going to be on the debate anyway. And so what is the point at that point in staying in? You're not going to recover from that. When your firewall, your biggest bet was in New Hampshire now. So he weighed all of his options, and he's getting out. Now, everybody hates Chris. That's about us. But it's not just about us. It's also about some other people, like Rupert Murdoch, who tweeted, Chris Christie, suicide bomber, damages victim while blowing himself up.
Damn.
Casual terrorism reference there from Rupert Murdoch.
So now that's part of the reason Chris Christie's leaving. Not because of that tweet, but because the idea is, hey, Chris, if you want to still go around in this revolving door system that we have, okay, stop doing damage to the guys we've spent a lot of money on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you had a good run and you took a nice shot at it, and we tolerated it for a while. And actually, we really liked you because before the bridge scandal and all that stuff, because you're an excellent lackey for Wall Street and moneyed interests while pretending to be a regular guy. Well played, well played.
Yeah.
Okay, but now you got to mosey on along if you want further donations at another time, or if you want a really good job with Wall Street or some of the other money
Fox
interests.
News.
Or even Fox News, which Rupert Murdoch, of course, owns.
Exactly.
So pack your bags, okay, and get out of here, right? So Chris Christie, that's how he got into power. He's not going to defy the powers that be. So remember that whole, I was a federal prosecutor and all that thing that he brags about? He got there by organizing donations for George W. Bush. He was not some sort of storied prosecutor with a great resume at all. No, he was a campaign bundler. So he's just a slimy politician. He got his job as a federal prosecutor by being a slimy politician. That's what he's done his whole life. So he's not going to go and turn around and screw over the rich people that have been his benefactors his whole life. So that's why he's got to go. And they're pissed, like guys like Murdoch, because they decided, hey, Rubio's our guy, and they switched their investments from Jeb Bush to Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Oops. And so when Chris Christie, messed them up in the debate, which he should have done many debates ago, then he might have had a fighting chance. Right. So now they're super mad at Christie when they should be mad at themselves because you shouldn't have supported Marco Rubio in the first place. How many times did I tell you? He's a boy.
Yeah.
So, hey, all you savvy investors that are so rich and Republican, too bad for you. Sad day, okay? You shouldn't have been such a schmuck. You should have picked a winner instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why you'd be so pissed off about switching your funding from Jeb, at least in New Hampshire. He spent $35 million. New Hampshire ain't that big. There ain't that many people. What would you have spent more money on if you had more money to give to Jeb? It would have been ridiculous. And I have a problem with the analogy to the suicide bomber. Christie didn't take himself out to also take out Rubio. That's the best thing he did for himself the entire campaign. That's the reason that he got in 6th place instead of probably past Fiorina, maybe. He probably would have still beaten her, but probably not by as much. And if he had done well, he would have stayed around, obviously. But I do love that Rupert Murdoch, so influential in political communication generally, but especially on the right, being so clearly biased towards one candidate and having so much ability to influence what Americans think, since he controls basically all of the newspapers and channels in a significant portion of this entire country.
Yeah, I know.
And he just gets to be like, no, it should be this candidate. I own everything, and we're going to go for this guy.
So every once in a while we get criticism. Well, you guys are biased. You're progressives. Okay, now we've never hid that. There's honesty in our labeling. Of course, we're progressives. Meanwhile, Fox News does the slogan of fair and balanced, and the owner of the network is like, "Oh, Rubio, I love Rubio," and even any other Republican against him, I hate, and yada yada, and is a suicide bomber.
Suicide bomber.
Meanwhile, New
Carefully chosen words.
New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, they all get to make endorsements. So why are they not biased, right? Everybody gets to be biased except the guy supporting Bernie Sanders. Because no. That would be biased and unacceptable.
Yeah.
You support Marco Rubio, you're awesome. If you support Hillary Clinton, you're wonderful. If you support Bernie Sanders, biased.
Yeah. Or if you're Rachel Maddow as a debate moderator.
Yeah.
Why is she on that stage? I would make a similar case, but in the opposite direction. Okay, let's jump to the other casualty of last night. Carly Fiorina is out after finishing with just 4% of the vote in New Hampshire. I would say whether she had under or over performed the polls, but I don't even know if she was being included in the polls at the end there. She had almost no chance. Now, she did benefit from a short-lived jump in the polls. After the first few debates, she did well in the undercard, was moved up to the overcard, I guess. And at one point, she was actually polling second to Donald Trump with 15% of the voters behind her. That was a very brief period. I believe that was before Carson's day or two in the sun. But that's how the Republican side seems to go. You go from one crazy to another for a couple of weeks, and then you settle on King Crazy, and that's what they did in New Hampshire last night. So she's out, which is probably for the best. She released...
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Her.
We got her.
Down goes Carly. Down goes Carly.
As if we cared enough to get her. Doesn't matter. I mean, she was polling just so low, although she still did beat Carson. She had twice as much as Carson.
She was riding the polls so low. Okay.
Carson, by the way, today is saying, I'm not going to rule out being Trump's vice president.
Okay, yeah.
But you're still in the race, right? That's interesting. Joe Scarborough being challenged by Trump saying, you're my supporter, and him saying, oh, no. He's already announced he wants to be his VP.
Oh, that's
I
so
love
sad.
people's just ridiculous behavior and statements.
Yeah. I'm aggressively trying to beat that guy, but I would be his bitch, though. I mean, if he asked me to, I would definitely do it. Right?
Yeah. I don't support you. I just want to enthusiastically run beside you.
Right.
Yeah. Now, she did put out a statement on Facebook. She wanted to do a press conference, but nobody showed up, and so she just went on her computer. She typed up a statement. We're not going to read the entire thing because it's Carly Fiorina. But part of it says, this campaign was always about citizenship, taking back our country from a political class that only serves the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected. The few people who actually funded my campaign, by the way. We did stories on that months and months ago. Election after election, the same empty promises are made and the same poll-tested stump speeches are given, but nothing changes except the rate at which some politicians blink. I've said throughout this campaign that I will not sit down and be quiet. I'm not going to start now. A leader is a servant whose highest calling is to unlock potential in others. I will continue to serve in order to restore citizen government to this great nation so that together we may fulfill our potential.
I like how you guys took out a sentence there, though.
I took out many.
Because
on purpose.
No, because it was funny. She said, I will not sit down and be quiet. 2 sentences later, she said, I suspend my candidacy today. Well, I got bad news for you. You kind of just did. So I love the ironies of the beginning of the quotes that John read for you guys. The system only works for a few privileged and wealthy. Carly, that's kind of you.
You're insanely
and
wealthy.
Almost every single person who donated to,
Yeah.
right?
You get paid more for being fired than I get paid for working.
Yeah, way more. Okay. And then, but even so, when she got to the issues, the first thing she mentioned was ending crony capitalism. Again, she's the definition of crony capitalism. Business people give to her so that they can get deregulation and lower taxes, et cetera, in return. In fact, there was one specific thing they asked from Carly. I'll get to that in a moment. But even on the Republican side, crony capitalism and the corruption in politics is so hated by the electorate that it's the first issue she mentions. Right? Like, oh, no, I'm against crony capitalism. Right? But at least she has to pretend. Right? Or, a longer wink like Ben Carson would do. Okay, so then I want to come back to the issue of why was she in the race in the first place? What did her funders want from her? Because here's the super interesting part, something we reported earlier on the Young Turks. It turns out that almost all of her large donors gave bigger amounts to other male Republican candidates. So they would give a big chunk to Ted Cruz and then a smaller chunk to Carly Fiorina. Now, wait a minute. Are they covering their bets? What are they? No. And the articles that we read and quoted for you guys at the time explained that what was expected of her was to attack Hillary Clinton and be a female voice supporting the issues that Republicans like. So she's a stalking horse in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now go get them, all right? And you're going to be useful. And then later, of course, our actual candidate will win and you'll move along, which is exactly what's happening now.
And she's implying that she's going to keep doing that.
Yeah. And in Huffington Post, there's a quote that summarizes her positions here. Fiorina largely declined to champion women's rights during her campaign. Along with her male GOP opponents, she argued that women had enough protection in the workplace and called paycheck fairness laws simple gestures. She expressed opposition to federally mandated maternity leave. She also opposed abortion and was an active crusader against Planned Parenthood. And of course, her most famous moment was in the speeches when she made up a lie about how there was a baby squirming around and kicking, and they were having a discussion about how they had to harvest his brain while it's still alive.
Yeah.
Total, complete, utter fiction, proved immediately to be a gigantic lie, but she did that all in the service of what she was paid to do. Her contributors said to her, now be a good little girl and go attack all other women, especially Hillary Clinton, and especially Planned Parenthood, and you'll get your checks, and then when it's your time, you'll step aside and let one of the boys run things.
Yeah.
So Carly, wow, what a champion for women you are. What an interesting addition you made to the race.
Yeah.
No, you served a useful purpose for the wealthy that you pretend to rail against in the beginning of this particular withdrawal speech.
Yeah.
So everything about her was fake and gross.
Yeah. And by the way, 1/3 of her statement was speaking directly to young girls and women, saying, don't feel like you're obligated to support Hillary Clinton. So, and look, I think that is an objectively true point, but the reason she's saying it is to peel off just a few, hopefully, potentially Republican voters, like that's going to work, not to get people to just evaluate a person's history, their beliefs, their proposed policies, and then vote accordingly, which is the reasonable reason to say what she said there. And look, maybe it would have never worked, but a long time ago, before we knew who was actually going to be running, it wasn't impossible that she could have done well. I mean, she can speak intelligently in prepared statements. When she answers questions, she sounds ridiculous because she's an empty shell. And even when she's like, here's the evidence about what you're saying is a lie, she'll just continue to say it over and over and over again. But she has business experience, and it's the business experience that Republicans like, firing people and then getting a golden parachute. And I mean, having a woman against Hillary Clinton certainly wouldn't have hurt from their point of view. So she could have potentially squeaked something out, but she was just horrible on the debate stage largely, worse off the debate stage, and never really invigorated anybody.
She's intensely unlikable. But that doesn't mean that we're done with Carly Fiorina. We should have been done with her when she got mauled in California running for Senate. She got destroyed by Barbara Boxer. Why is she even in this race if she can't win her own state? Well, the reason, again, is because she's useful. So she might continue to be useful. First of all, you think she won't get a cabinet position in a Republican administration? Oh, God. She most certainly will.
Secretary of Defense, Carly Fiorina.
So that's how this game is played. So you do your role, and then later you are rewarded, and around we go. And it's also entirely possible that she could be a VP nominee, especially if Hillary Clinton is the nominee for the Democrats. So you haven't heard the last of Carly.
She doesn't seem to like Trump, though, with good reason. Doesn't mean she wouldn't do it anyway. She doesn't seem to like him.
She also doesn't seem to have very many principles.
That's true. That's true. Unfortunately, she won't be able to get head of energy because that's going to Sarah Palin. So it might have to be defense for her, where she can talk about Trident missiles and the submarine fleets.
That's right. Okay.
Anyway,
let's take a quick break now. But I need you to come back because you're going to see one of the funniest videos you have ever seen. Okay, now this is a political video. I got to tell you, it's Jeb. It's Jeb. But no. You're not allowed to miss it. Okay. Now, if you're not getting the whole show, this is a good reason to sign up on this alone because you've got to see this video. TYTnetwork.com/join to become a member. Come right back if you're watching live. We'll show it. For those of you watching live stream and seeing the iguana in that what appears to be a dirty tank, I want to dispel the notion that we don't know that it's dirty. We know. We know. Okay, Rich Crab writes in, Jeb watching TYT to learn how to be Jeb from Jimmy. It is entirely possible. Jeremy Viner writes in, I'm not convinced Jeb Bush is still running for president. I think he's just there now because he has nothing better to do anymore, which, by the way, is somewhat true because after he drops out, he's done. He's never going to run for president again. I mean, he just drifts off into Bush Valhalla, otherwise known as Kennebunkport. Okay, Ruth Iverson writes, how are Jewish people any different than anyone else? But I guess that's always the question with prejudice. Makes no sense at all, referring to Ted Nugent's horrible anti-Semitism. But Ruth, that's the whole point, that this is the oldest, unfortunately, trick in the book against Jews everywhere, which is, they're secretly controlling everything. In this case, Nugent puts up the post on his Facebook account saying they're secretly the ones that are for gun control and want to take the guns away. And then points out that they were sold as sheep during the Holocaust. Now, that would be ironic if it turns out that Ted Nugent was right, which is inconceivable under any circumstance, and Jews had gotten killed during the Holocaust because they didn't have guns. Why would they want to take people's guns away today? No, but it isn't about that. It's about saying they secretly control everything. And that's exactly what the Nazis did and said before the Holocaust. That's why it's so horrible and insidious. And Tom Zawacki writes in, haven't you noticed that the largest leaders on the right are all spineless cowards and draft dodgers? Yes, I have noticed that. We used to point that out all the time. Dick Cheney got 5 deferments from Vietnam. Tom DeLay, I think, might have gotten 7. Okay, Tom DeLay had the best excuse. He said, the blacks and Mexicans took my spot. Okay, Dick Cheney said I had better things to do. Newt Gingrich also ran. Ted Nugent ran. They all ran. Almost every Republican ran from Vietnam and then later would go on to start wars that other people would fight. Okay,
of course.
They're the deeply immoral people that they are. Okay, now on the lighter stuff, does John dislike Donald Trump more than Jimmy dislikes cops?
Oh, we did that poll.
Yeah, it's on our app. And you know what? It's at exactly 50% to 50%.
That's incredible.
Okay, and it is. It's super. I don't know. I don't know who's which one is going to win. And right now, one of them has. I can't quite tell. No, I'm going to call it a virtual tie, just like Iowa. Okay, but you can keep voting at the app we have. Of course, just type in TYT in the App Store. And whose body part is more impressive? We never filled the American people about this. Cenk's triceps. Or Christian's quads. That's her fiance.
Don't let me down, guys.
Okay, they did. Cenk's triceps, 69%.
Really?
That's right. Oh yeah.
You do have nice triceps.
Thank you. The American people have spoken. Okay. Thank you, guys. All right. What else we got, Anna?
I have some great news for you guys. All right. February 14th is TYT's anniversary, and as a celebratory gesture, we are offering a free post-game show for everyone on Monday, February 15th. So go to tytnetwork.com/live to check out the post-game show. That's for our members. Our members pay $10 a month to get the post-game show and archives of our program. They help support the show. You guys help keep us independent. We love you, so definitely check it out and see if you like it.
All right, man. You know what? We have been around, by the way, thanks to our members. Back in 2005, we almost went under, but members rescued us. And we wouldn't have even been around now. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
So that's why we say tytnetwork.com/join to join us and be one of our members. We've been around for 14 years.
That's amazing.
That's a long time, man.
That is a long
A
time.
lot of giant media organizations have come and gone, but thanks to you guys, we're still here.
All right. Should we do the news?
Let's do the news.
All right. Hillary Clinton continues to position herself as the best candidate for females, but it turns out that female voters in New Hampshire actually favored Bernie Sanders over her. Let me give you the numbers. Now, an analysis of the demographics show that 55% of females actually supported Sanders over Hillary. 44%, I should say, supported Clinton. Now, if you look at the male demographic, obviously there's more of a disparity there because, you know, male supporters are obviously sexist.
Yeah, they're Bernie bros, all of them. That's, of course, what Hillary Clinton's camp is implying. They, of course, had Madeleine Albright come out and say there's a special place in hell reserved for women who don't support other women. So I guess the majority of Democratic female voters in New Hampshire going to hell.
Going to hell.
Okay. Sorry, we tried to help you. Madeleine Albright warned you, but you didn't listen. So off to Hades you go.
Yeah, the demographics from the New Hampshire primaries is so interesting to look at. Let's look at age, right? So of voters that are between the ages of 18 and 29, 83% supported Sanders over Hillary. Isn't that insane? It's not insane. It's not surprising to me, but having that number right in front of your face is so nice.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I was just talking to some folks in D.C., and apparently inside the Beltway, they're flummoxed as to why young people like Bernie Sanders so much. And no, they have no idea. They're like, it is the biggest mystery in the world. If only someone can solve it. Don't worry, I'm here to save the day. Okay, so, hey, listen, you knuckleheads. There's a lot of different factors involved, but the main factor is where are they getting their information? So what media do they consume? For example, for our show, 75% of our audience is under the age of 35. For CNN, their average viewer is 64 years old. Fox News average viewer is 68 years old. Bill O'Reilly's average viewer is 72 years old. So if you're ancient and you watch TV and that's where you get your news, in TV, do they ever talk about the policies? Almost never, right? Oh, the horse race and what's happening today. And then they'll bring in an idiot like Mark Halperin who'll say, oh, my gut says the American people believe this. No, I don't care about your gut. What does the polling indicate if you're talking about a horse race? And who's more progressive? Well, let's look at the voting records, right? But they never have those conversations. And I've talked to old media executives who say, well, it's because we have an audience that we need to speak to in a broader way. We don't have the luxury of online being able to do specific videos or specific articles. We need to be broad, so we never dive in. Well, if you don't dive in, you have the older demographics, and across the country, the demographic that supports Hillary Clinton the most is old people, right? Because they don't know. They don't know who Bernie Sanders is oftentimes. And if they do know Bernie Sanders, they don't know that he's more progressive than Hillary Clinton. Do they know how many times Hillary Clinton has flip-flopped her positions? Mm-hmm. No, they don't know because they watch TV, right?
Right. And also, I mean, yes, there's the media component of it, but there's also this issue that Hillary's camp is having with resonating with young voters. I think that a lot of young voters do want a political revolution. They are feeling the economic burdens of crony capitalism. And when you have one candidate that continuously talks about those issues, well, young people are going to support that candidate.
So, but that goes to the same phenomenon, which is we don't live in that same world anymore. Because the guys in Washington and New York are honestly incredibly powerful and usually very wealthy. So they don't know other people that are struggling, for example, with student loan debt.
Right.
So when you bring up student loan debt on CNN, or anybody or Bernie Sanders brings it up, they're like, why do people care about that?
Right.
I'm so wealthy, I don't have to worry about that. My kids didn't have to worry. Why? Why is that resonating? Because knucklehead people live outside of the Washington bubble, the great majority of us, and they're having trouble finding jobs, and the list goes on and on. But you never caught on to that because you want to protect the establishment. You are the establishment in Washington. So when the anti-establishment forces have gathered at your gates, yeah, you don't get it because you've been in that establishment bubble all along. Mm-hmm. So yes, they're coming to change that system. So sad day for you. And let me add to that, bringing the media and that phenomenon together is the one thing that Hillary Clinton lacks the most and Bernie Sanders has the most.
Yes.
Authenticity. So if you grow up in a world where news actors read scripts to you from a teleprompter. And they go, oh, tonight, well, here's what we have found. There's a car crash. Hillary Clinton is incredibly liberal. And they have their little script. And you grow up in that world, you think everything should be fake. So when the politicians come and they do this, which the political consultants have told them is the best finger-pointing way, right? Mm-hmm. And they have the intonation that Marco Rubio and Hillary Clinton both have because they were taught by political consultants. That screams fake to young people.
Yes.
When Bernie Sanders comes out and he's like your grandpa, and he goes, look, I've been saying the same thing for 40 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm, hey, Wall Street, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I'm coming for you. People go, goddamn right you are. That guy means it. He's authentic. And so that's what younger voters like. So here, I just solved it for you. So go tell Hillary Clinton's political consultants to try to be even more fake, trying to appear to be authentic.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate your advice, but they don't want to hear it.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to some devastating news. A black teenager in Austin, Texas, was shot and killed by authorities after he was allegedly having some sort of altercation and apparently having some sort of episode. Now, very few details have been released about whether or not this teenager has any type of mental health issues, but David Joseph was not only unarmed, he was completely naked when he allegedly charged at a police official, and the police official shot and killed him. Now, police say that on Monday morning they received multiple calls from residents of the neighborhood reporting that the teen, now identified as 17-year-old David Joseph, was acting erratically and chasing another male in a nearby apartment complex. Austin Police Chief of Staff Brian Manley told reporters Tuesday that when police arrived at the scene, the teen was not wearing any clothes and proceeded to charge at veteran officer Jeffrey Freeman, who is also black. Okay? So why are you shooting someone who's naked and unarmed, especially when you're a cop who has other non-lethal weapons that you can use in order to restrain this individual? I don't really understand it. I feel like at this point, it doesn't matter if you're armed or not, cops are able to just shoot and kill you and they get away with it. Now, there's an internal investigation. There's also an independent investigation into this. The cop is on administrative leave. But this is not an isolated incident. There have been other cases of naked people who have been shot and killed by police. There was a case last year in Georgia where another black guy was shot and killed, unarmed, naked, shot and killed by a police official. His identity wasn't even released, so I don't know what happened with the investigation into that.
Oh, yeah, they're still looking into it a year later. And in that case, 911 had called in reporting a man acting deranged, knocking on doors, and crawling around naked. So on their way to the scene, they already know he's not armed because he's naked. In this case, the guy sees him, writes in his report he was naked, knows he's not armed. So now, we're not saying that it wasn't problematic. That's why all the people called in to 911. We get it.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's your job. You're not a dentist. You're a cop. And your job is to go and control situations just like that, right? And what we're asking you to do is when you show up at a scene like that, to not murder people while you're doing it. And if you shoot someone who is clearly, beyond any shadow of a doubt, not armed, well, that should be adjudicated one day as murder. So it's not that the officer in this case was black and the one in Atlanta was white. And is there a racial component? Sometimes. Yes, right? And it's not because of who's doing the shooting. It's because of the person getting shot. Black people, unfortunately, we've shown it in study after study, are perceived not just by whites, but also other blacks, and that's how insidious, unfortunately, discrimination is, as more dangerous. So the cop gets there and sees a black person. It doesn't matter that you can absolutely positively prove, and the guy knows that he is not armed, does not have a weapon. It's dangerous, dangerous, I got to shoot him, right? So that's part of it. But the much larger part is, how many times do we have to say it? You're not training the cops right. You're training them to be cowards. Oh, if anyone comes anywhere near you, hey, why did we bother teaching you hand-to-hand combat, right? They go through that training for cops. They never use it. Because if anyone's within a mile perimeter of you, he looked at me kind of funny. Shoot him dead. That guy's clearly not armed. Shoot him dead. That guy has a baseball bat. Shoot him dead. That guy's walking away from me. He's got his back turned to me, but he has a blade maybe, a little bit. I'll shoot him dead. That guy's running away from me. I know he's not armed. Shoot him dead. Shoot him in the back. We're training them. Don't take any risks. Be cowards. Be cowards. Don't take any risks with your life. If you guys, oh, that's inconvenient, man. This guy's a little crazy and he's charging at me. He's naked. I don't want to touch him. Why don't I just kill him instead?
It goes beyond the lack of training within these departments throughout the country. The country is also training these cops to be emboldened by the fact that they can do these acts of murder and not have to face any consequences of it. When you have a grand jury that doesn't even vote on whether or not you're going to indict the police official who shot and killed a 12-year-old boy who had a toy gun, well, I mean, that kind of sends a message to all other cops who might have, you know, a bias against certain groups of people or who might be a little more trigger happy than other cops.
That tells you you're above the law. It doesn't matter. We got your back. You kill anyone you like. You're never going to be held to account. So that's the message this country has been sending for decades. And so we shouldn't be surprised when they keep killing us over and over and over again. So what are you supposed to do? Yes, you're supposed to restrain them. Yes, you're supposed to get a little bit of training about people who might be mentally ill. By the way, the only group that competes with African Americans for who gets killed disproportionately by cops is the mentally ill. Okay, so in cities where there's a large concentration of African Americans get killed more by cops. In rural areas where there are not a lot of African Americans, mentally ill people get killed more. Okay, because they go, why bother? Why bother? It's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of a threat. Okay, so let's just kill the guy and be done with it. Let's move on with our lives, right? So, no, let's train them on how to deal with people that are mentally ill. Let's train them on how to deal with people as if they're actually decent, caring, moral human beings here to protect us rather than to kill us. Yes, at some point you restrain him. We know that. But there's 1,000 degrees between restraining him with your hands, for example, and shooting him dead without even getting into any other kind of confrontation. But, you know, what will people do? They'll excuse this.
Of course they will. I mean,
comments.
that's the even more devastating part of it. I mean, not only did someone lose their life, there might be no justice in this case whatsoever.
Oh, but you guys don't know. I mean, he might have been in danger, kind of, a little bit. I mean, would you want a guy who's naked to touch you? No, of course. You kill him.
Just kill him right
you
away.
Murder him and be done with it. Yeah, you don't know. Besides, the cop was black in this case, so ha-ha. What does that mean? You guys are such animals. Okay, any decent human being thinks, don't shoot that poor kid who clearly is having an episode, right? He doesn't mean anything bad by it. He's not a guy who's doing it with intent. It's obvious. He's got a mental issue. Help him. Don't murder him.
All right. A Black Lives Matter activist shot and killed himself on the steps of the Ohio State House. Now, there are very few details as to why he did this. I don't know whether or not he was depressed prior to this happening or if he was suffering from depression for a long period of time prior to this happening. But Marshawn McCarroll wrote a few messages on social media prior to taking his own life, again, on the Ohio State House, or on the steps of the Ohio State House. He wrote the following on Facebook: "My demons won today. I'm sorry," the activist posted on his Facebook page around 3 p.m. on Monday. That was just hours before his body was found near the State House. He also founded a youth mentorship program, Pursuing Our Dreams, which launched Feed the Streets, a project to help Ohio's homeless. He attended the NAACP's Image Awards on Friday. Pursuing Our Dreams wrote on its Facebook page. So this is a guy who was very active, not only with the black community, but with individuals that were disadvantaged. He wanted to help them out. On Twitter, he wrote, "People who look like me are one breath away from being an Eric Garner."
Obviously, Eric Garner was the guy who was choked to death by the NYPD for selling loose cigarettes. Actually, at that time, he wasn't even selling loose cigarettes. He was actually breaking up a fight. But earlier, he had sold loose cigarettes. Wow, what a crime. So he had to be choked to death. So obviously, in this case, McCarroll was upset about that and many other police abuse cases. But upon reading of this, it seems fairly obvious, given the limited information we have, that he had some issues with some sort of depression, saying my demons won today, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't think these things are connected. I mean, he said that before he left, he pissed on the State House. So, yes, he's upset about the way young black people are being treated in this country. He's only 23 years old, but there appears to be no indication that's why he took his life. And most of the time, people who take their lives are in a deep depression.
Yes.
And so, yes, there could be triggers in the outside world, but they're either going in that direction or not going in that direction. It's not like some guy who was perfectly happy was like, man, I really hate how black people are being treated. I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Yeah. I just felt like it was important to mention him and, you know, what he had done in his life to help people that were disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So.
No, of course, it's a tragedy, and that's why we need to get better with mental health in this country. And maybe there was a way that we could have helped him. And obviously, here's a kid who cared a lot, and a tragic ending, obviously.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll hopefully lighten the mood a little bit. When you go to Red Lobster, are you actually getting lobster?
Oh, I've got deep thoughts on this.
Oh, me too.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
All right, we're gonna hit a very important lobster topic when we come back.